Hello everyone. So this is the first lecture and the first topic on construction materials. So the first lecture will be about introduction. As I said in the last live session, it will be a general introduction about materials, not only construction materials, but we will cover the 5 major categories of materials that are used in different industrial sectors. So the outline of this topic, of course, we cannot cover the whole topic in one recording, so it will be divided into 3 or 4 recordings. I'm going to try to make the recording quite short, maximum 40 to 45 minutes. So the topic might be divided or split into 4 to 5 or maybe 3 different recordings. So what we're going to discuss in this first topic. So first, a general introduction about materials. Then we'll discuss the concepts or the differences and similarities between materials science and materials engineering. What is the link between these two different areas and disciplines? What is the relationship between science and technology or engineering? And we will discuss also the different types of materials that exist and use it in various industrial sectors and our daily life. And lastly, we'll discuss how we select the material. If you have a specific application, and you have a range of materials available that will be used for that specific application, how you are going to select one specific material to be used in that specific application. Okay, let's go. So as a learning objective, so you will learn to make a difference between materials science and materials engineering. What makes a difference between these two disciplines. Also, you will learn the different types of materials and how you classify materials, and also the selection business of materials, selection process, how you're going to select the right material for the right application. So, but before we go further, why do you think we need materials? Do really we need to study materials science and materials engineering? Of course, the need for using materials, of course, it is undisputable. It is something that we all agree that, of course, in our daily life, in different business sectors, we need to use materials. Without using materials, we cannot construct, we cannot build, we cannot make any other useful tools that are needed for different purposes in our daily life. But do we really need to study materials science and materials engineering? So what do you think? Of course, the need for studying materials science and materials engineering is a highly need, and you cannot escape it, because materials are really how to say, spread and seated in our culture and our life more maybe than we realize. Our daily life is influenced by the use of materials in a different ways. And you can just think about your own life, how it is interacting or how it is influenced by the materials. So I will just let you think about the interaction and the influences of materials on your own life. Every one of you can just think about this matter and how materials are influencing his or her life. So let's just have a look, short look to the materials in our daily life. In fact, materials are an essential part of our everyday life. How is that? Think about it. So, you know, the concrete that made the buildings where you are living and where you are studying. Fortunately, now there is no in-class study, or where people are working. These buildings are not all mostly made with concrete. We will see the different types of materials used in construction, but concrete, of course, is the largest building material used to construct different types of structures. So the building or the house where you are living right now, and maybe you are watching this video, is built most probably with concrete. The chair on which you are sitting right now might be made with polymers. Most probably, because there are different types of chair, but most probably the most used types of chair, of course, or to make chairs, of course, is polymers. Either it is wood, and wood also is a polymer. We will see later on throughout this course. So wood is called the natural polymer, or it is made with plastic, and plastic also is a polymer. Is manufactured and industrial or home or human-made or man-made polymer. And of course, you can look around you. You can find also many applications of plastic that you can use in your daily life. The table you are using for dining or for studying, or most probably is made with wood, and also wood, of course, is a polymer. The metal ball pen you are using also is made with materials. If you look to the street just near to your house, the street you are walking on, you're driving on, either the walk side or the pathway or the highway or the normal roads, these roads are made with what? Are made with materials. Of course, asphalt, aggregate, and so on, but these are all materials. So the bottom line, our daily life is highly influenced by materials, because all what is surrounding us, it is all, they are materials. What we are using, what we are sitting on, what we are using for as tools, even to eat, the tools we are using, the dishes, the spoons, the forks, are all materials, made with materials. So this is why we need, of course, to study materials science and materials engineering, because we are surrounded by materials, we are using materials in our daily life, we are influenced by materials, and materials are part of our daily life. If you look to the transportation, any transportation system, starting from the cars to the buses to the bicycles to the airplane to the train to the boats, All these are made with materials, including, of course, the roots. It's not only the tools itself. The transportation means, buses or trucks or cars or a train, but also the road itself is made with materials, or the railway is also made with materials, except of course the boat is running on the water, but of course the water also is a material. So it is a liquid material. The housing, all housings are made with material, either made with ceramic materials like concrete, or made with wood, which is a polymer, or made with steel, which is also a material, or other minor materials. But still, of course, you're building your house with, or any buildings, of course, is made up with materials. Infrastructures. So all infrastructures, like ports, airports, highways, so all this is kind of mega structure that we call them infrastructures. So all these are also made, of course, bridges are made, of course, with materials. Communications system. Communication system are made, of course, with fibers and, of course, wires. So all this, of course, the wires mostly are with copper or aluminium or whatever types of metals, and maybe covered with polymers. And the power tower, of course, is made also with materials, or the power tower for communications system is also made with metals or concrete. So any system of communication, it needs, of course, the use of certain types of materials. Even recreation and leisure, if you go to sports center or social center or any kind of centers where you can enjoy, where you can watch like cinema or like watching movies, or so all these centers or recreation centers are of course made also with materials. Sports center, even your clothing also are made with materials. Textile, of course, is a material. Even the food and drinks production, it needs materials. The food itself, it's different types of materials, vegetable materials. But the packing of the foods and the drinks, of course, are packed in a material, either plastic or metals for cans, or the food packaging, of course, it needs different types of materials. So we can say that, of course, we are surrounded by materials, we are influenced by materials, we are interacting in a daily life with materials. Now we're going to look just to a short or brief history of materials science, how materials science started and how it is evolving throughout the years, and how it is involved now in our uses of materials. So the use of materials by human being is not new. Is not dating just from the 19th or 18th century or the 20th century. It is dated back to at least 10,000 years of recorded history. This is we are talking about the recorded history, because not the whole history is recorded. But the real beginning of materials use was long before the recorded history. From the time the human being exists on Earth, of course, he and she was using materials for the different purpose of their lives. We can divide this the history of use of materials by the human into three major eras. So the first era is called an initial material science era, where people at the time, they didn't have enough knowledge or any kind of technology, so they were using materials as they were found in nature. So very little or no modifications uh, were um, occurred or were applied on the materials. So human was using just the material as it is available in nature, like using the wood or the stones for different purposes of their daily life. So this is usually, it is dated back to 8,000 to 6,000 before Christ, BC. So at this time, of course, the main idea here is the people were using material, but with no modifications or very little modifications. So they were using mostly, of course, stone and wood that are available in nature, but without introducing any major modification or very little modification on the material itself. And then in the second era, so the human has started learning a little bit of chemistry and physics in order, of course, to include or to provide some changes to the material and to obtain what they need. So just introducing very small modifications on the material through, of course, some process, chemistry process, to change the natural material to somehow manufactured one. So this is usually dated back to something like 5,000 to 1,000 BC. And then it comes the last or the third era. So at this era here, so a human has learned a little bit to more chemistry, more physics, more material science, and has learned how to separate metals from the ore using heating process. So a human at this time, of course, with accumulated knowledge from chemistry, physics, so he learned, or she, of course, learned that using the heat or thermal treatment or heating up the ore can separate the metals between them and can create new metals. So this is dating back to somehow to 1730 to 1950. 1730 after AD, of course, and 1950, of course, century or our modern history. So now let's have a look to the materials throughout the history and the materials world, and how a human is naming the materials, relating them to the history. So we have learned up to now that materials are part of our life. That means there is an interaction between the human and between the materials. And therefore, materials define our social relationship and economic quality. So how we are using the materials, what types of materials we are using, what quality of materials we are using, this defines, of course, our social relationship and our economic quality of life. We have seen that human, or we know that human, the beginner or the earlier human, they were using the materials mostly for what? What kind of use? Mostly for tools and weapons. because they need these kind of weapons, of course, to survive and to make their life. So this is why, of course, we are saying that materials are, or our life is linked to materials, and there is a social relationship between the materials and the human, of course, because we are using the materials in a different ways as tools or as weapons or for other purposes, of course. If you go back to the earlier history, of course, you can learn more about how a human was using the materials and for what purposes and what kind of materials the human at that time was using. So based on this relationship between the human and the materials, researchers have divided the use of materials or the history of materials in terms of the material that at that time was mostly used. So this is why they call the Stone Age. So the Stone Age referred to that time where human was mostly using stones for his daily life for different purpose. So the Stone Age, generally, it is dated back to 2.5 million years ago. Of course, at that time, human was using other materials, natural materials like wood and animal fur. But of course, the main material used at that time, so the main materials that were used at that time, of course, is stone. But of course, in addition to stone, human was using also, of course, wood and animal fur. Of course, animal fur, you understand that it is coming from the hunting. So, of course, mainly the human at that time, of course, the main source of food for the human at that time is by, of course, hunting. So, of course, and of course, eating meat of different animals. And of course, the fur of the animal was used for making tent or clothes or whatever. Then it comes after the Stone Age. So now we understand that the Stone Age, it is called Stone Age because human at that time was mainly using stone for different purposes of his life. Then it comes the Pottery Age, and this is dating back to something like 4000 BC. So human at that time has learned to make some pottery, like you can see here in this picture, for, of course, mostly domestic purposes, domestic vessels. So this is the main purpose of using the pottery. But of course, the Pottery Age is not really official name given to that age. Then it comes the Copper Age. So the Copper Age, it is estimated roughly between the 4000 BC and 3000 BC. Of course, it is named Copper Age because at that time, you can see here some pictures, human has learned how to separate copper from other metals, from the ore, and making some tools, domestic tools, and also some weapons using the copper. Then it comes the Bronze Age. So the Bronze Age is mainly dating back to between 2000 BC and 1000 BC. And the better quality, of course, human has learned to make a better quality of weapons because weapons at that time was, of course, the main tool used by human for hunting and for other purposes for his or her daily life. So of course, the bronze, just to give you this earlier information, bronze is made up, is an alloy. An alloy, that means it's a mix between two or more, but at least minimum 2 different metals. Of course, we will study this later on in other coming topics. So bronze is made up with copper and 12% of tin, SN. So it is a mix of Cu and SN. So this mix will make new material called the bronze. So now you can see that the Stone Age and then the Bronze Age, this is the official history recording and related to materials. Of course, the Pottery Age and the Copper Age is not officially recognized as a name for that specific periods. Then it comes the Iron Age. The Iron Age, of course, referring to at that time, human was using mostly iron for making tools and weapons. So this period is mainly dating back from 1000 BC to 1 BC. So the iron alloys had largely replaced the bronze for tool and weapon making in Europe. So we have just seen that the earlier age before the Iron Age was, of course, the Bronze Age. But the bronze, of course, has a different properties than iron. We will see this, of course, in the coming topics. So iron has some specific properties that cannot be found in other metals. And of course, at this time, of course, human has learned how to extract the iron from the iron ore and make it or use it for making different tools and weapons. Then it comes the plastic age. This is the nowadays area, or sorry, the nowadays era. And it's not, of course, officially recognized or referred. But of course, starting from the 20th century, of course, you maybe learned that or observed that, of course, nowadays that plastic is invading our life and we are consuming and using plastic in an extensive way, of course, for different packaging, different purposes and different uses. So this is why we call it plastic age. Then it comes the last one, or the silicon age. So silicon age is referring to the use of silicon. So this is another name of the same period of the plastic age, of course, because at the same time we're extensively using plastic for different applications, but also we are using silicon also for high technology and different applications. So silicon technology now is really has brought big revolution in terms of, especially for your because silicon is largely used for different high technology, starting from your smartphones, from your computer, your laptop, your tablets, and so on. So silicon is too much used in nowadays different devices and tools and technologies. So this is why it is called the silicon age. But you understand that this is not official names. The official names are only the Stone Age, and then the Bronze Age, and then the Iron Age. So you can see here also in this chart the evolution of engineering materials over time, starting from the recorded history, as we said, 10,000 BC, up to 2020. This is, of course, the year we are talking about. Of course, this chart was not developed this year. This chart was developed many few years ago. So at that time, of course, this part was like predicted or estimated, but now it's, of course, a reality. So you can see here that the human is almost using the same materials 10,000 BC, what we are using right now in 2020. Same, you can see here, polymers, composite, ceramics. So same thing we are using right now. What's the difference? The difference at the time The human was using these materials, but the natural one, not the manufactured and the produced one. So you can see a human was using gold at that time, was using also different polymers and elastomers, but the polymers the human was using at that time, not the same polymers we are using right now. So the polymers that human was using at that time mostly is of course wood, skins, fibers. And these, as we said, are also natural polymers. But plastic, of course, and polypropylene, polyethylene, and so on, we will discuss some of them later in the coming topics, are called manufactured and man-made polymers. Also, composite materials like straw and bricks. So also ceramic materials. So human was using stone, flint, pottery, glass at that time, but from natural from a natural side, purely natural, with very little modifications or with no modifications at all. But if we come to our daily life now, and if we come to our contemporary time now, so composite, we are using composite across glass fiber reinforced polymer, carbon fiber reinforced polymer, Kevlar fiber reinforced metals matrix, ceramics composite. But these are all manufactured the new technology used to produce these composite materials. Same thing if we talk about polymers, as I said now, and also metals. So human was also using copper, bronze, iron at the time, but now we are using the same metals, but with a higher quality, because technology allowed us to develop these materials and produce high quality and even produce more alloys, which is of course a combination of two or more metals together to produce a high quality metals with different properties and enhanced quality. So the bottom line here, you can see that human is using quite human in 2020 and thereafter is using quite the similar materials that human in 10,000 BC was using, but of course with a different quality and different manufacturing process, because back to 10,000 BC and later on, the materials were mostly natural material without any manufacturing process. So the manufacturing started a little bit later on, where humans start to produce some cement and some rubber, some alloy steels, and so on. So civilization, as we have seen, are linked to the material that was used at the time. This is why we call them Stone Age, Bronze Age, and Iron Age, because referring to the material that was used at that time by human being. Of course, the earliest human, they have very limited access to materials. They have only a limited number of materials available, like wood, stone, and fur, the animal fur. But of course, nowadays we have, of course, a large variety of materials available and can be used for different purposes. So later on, human has learned and discovered some techniques to produce new types of materials with a better and superior quality that makes his life easier than the first and the earliest human. The first material used for construction project was, of course, stone, as you know. So even the earliest human were using stone not only for constructing their houses or their shelter, but also you can see human was using stone also for other different purposes as tools. And of course, maybe one of the most famous structure that is made with stones is the Great Wall of China, which is built around 2,000 years ago. And this structure is still standing and was built with stone. So stone could be considered, or mostly it is considered, as the oldest construction material. Of course, wood also sometimes you may find in some other references, but wood also is considered as one of the oldest construction materials. So stone was the main material used, but later on metals start to be used in different construction projects, and mostly after the 4th BC, humans started developing and using different types of metals. So the metals now are developing very rapidly and link it, of course, to the society needs and society evolution. And now, of course, we are witnessing the development of many other more advanced technologies to make our life more comfortable, of course, by developing new materials with higher quality and, of course, with a better performance. So we have access to the suitable materials. What you need as a material, what is more suitable for you as a material, we have much more access than our ancestors they had. And now you can see we have even sophisticated materials that are used, especially for making these new devices and high-tech devices like mobiles and smartphones and TVs and computers and so on. So choosing the construction materials should be made only after a detailed review of long-term performance and potential to be affected by the environment, compatibility with the environment. So I will stop here, and in next recording we will start talking about the classification of materials